It is just a huge honor for me today to be podcast interviewing Dr. Tim McNeely, the CEO of the LifeStone companies, who has a passion for working with successful dentists in order to help them take care of the ones they love and support the causes they care about. It all began when he married a dentist, Dr. Dana Yeoman, DDS, whose dad was also a dentist, whose dad was friends with one of my classmates, Dr. Chip Castine. What a small world we live in Bakersfield, California. Over a decade later, Tim has been involved in numerous books and research projects that study the super rich manage their financial firms. Due to his expertise on the super rich, he was invited to write the foreword to Becoming Seriously Wealthy, How to Harness the Strategies of the Super Rich and Ultra Wealthy Business Owners. Tim is a contributing author to leading business journals, a frequent speaker at Mastermind and CEO Group, South California, and he's here to share how you can accelerate your success by following in the path of the super rich, no matter your net worth. Thanks for coming on the show today.
Hey, I am excited as can be to be here with you today and share some strategies from the super rich and help bring those down to everyone.
And I want to tell you that, in all honesty, you're lucky to come on the show because I never accept these types of people because I can't vouch for them. And me having them come on the show, it's like an implied endorsement. It's like, could you imagine some guy like this, nefarious, and takes all someone's money and says, well, I only heard of him on Howard's show. But vetting hell, you're married a dentist. So now, you can't vet yourself more than marrying a dentist. But, so are dentists different than other groups? I mean, is financial planning, is there anything unique because we're dentists versus plumbers, teachers, carpenters, mechanics?
Yeah, absolutely. It couldn't be more different, Howard. When you think about it, I don't know too many teachers that start their life with $1 million of debt. Nowadays, that's pretty common. A new dentist getting out of school, and so the debt load right away, right off the charts. And the other thing is, so often dentists are business owners. It takes special planning to really get in there and build optimal financial worlds. Very different than just being an employee or a teacher or an engineer and working for someone else. There's so many other skills other than dentistry that you've got to possess. So
you're right. I mean, if you were going to become a teacher, electrical engineer, an architect, you wouldn't have the student loans or investing in a big practice. So that is, I know on Dental Town, one of the first things they struggle with is, okay, well, obviously I'm not going to start my retirement planning while I got student loan debt. Then other people are like, no, you got to start your retirement while you pay down your student loans. And that seems kind of confusing. Why am I saving $1 in the bank for my retirement when I could have paid down debt for $1?
Well, right. This is one of those things that I go back and forth on. And it really, we want to talk about the super rich, and we'll get there. And one of the things the super rich do better than anyone else is they work with advisors who really understand them. And, some people, as they're paying off their student loans, they may say, you know what, I just want to sleep really well at night. I don't care that I'm going to have an extra $1 million or $2 million at retirement. I want to feel good now, knowing I've paid off every bit of debt and I don't have to worry about that. Other people say, you know what, I'm really comfortable with that. It's my student loans are a low interest rate, my business debt for my practice. I'm comfortable with how all that works. And right now I want to maximize my tax savings, and I want to stuff as much money away for retirement as possible, because maximizing my net worth is the most important thing. And so, I hate to kind of answer that question in a roundabout way, but so much of it depends on the individual, and there's really no right or wrong answer to these questions.
For me, it's tough to even wrap my mind around financial planning because, so first of all, my introductory to that was the first book I fell in love with on this was The Millionaire Next Door.
Yep.
And just an amazing book, shows you the simple spending habits and saving habits that lead to more cash to the bank. So when people talk about financial planning, I always think, okay, well, don't get married so you won't get divorced. Don't have any kids, and just save your money. And then these kids, they become dentists, and they get married in dental school. A lot of them out here, there's 2 dental schools in my backyard, will start having a kid or 2 in dental school. And then they come out and both the man and the woman's parents live in the valley, and I say, well, just live with your parents in their basement. Oh no, they go buy a house, and it's not even a normal house. It's always a bigger house. They get a car. It's never a normal car. It's always bigger. They go on vacation. It's never fishing at the lake with $1. It's always to Hawaii. It's like I look at Dennis and I just say to him, I say, just name me one area where you live below the median. And if physicians, dentists, lawyers, and that's what the millionaire next door taught me, is that, you know who has $1 million saved at the end? Teachers more than doctors. Because when you're a teacher, you don't think you should live in a mansion in Beverly Hills. You think you should live in a teacher house. Yep.
Well, at the same time, though, not enjoying everything that we've worked so hard for, that's kind of boring, too. And, tomorrow's not guaranteed. So to me, there's always a balancing act of being responsible, being good stewards of the wealth we create, and also being able to enjoy it, right? And money's a funny thing, because when you think about it, there's a point of diminishing returns with money. So, take hotels, for example. My Hiltons, they're a little bit nicer than the Motel 6, right? Like you start stepping up, but then you get to the Ritz-Carlton, and now you're at Dubai, and it's there's a point where that diminishing returns really creeps in, and you don't get a whole lot more for your money. And it's, you want to find those points where you're comfortable at, and that your income can actually support it. Because, as you just mentioned, income creep and lifestyle creep is massive within a lot of these professional communities. People start spending way more than what they really need to spend to have a good quality of life.
I love how you said income creep, spending creep, or what?
Lifestyle creep.
Lifestyle creep. That's
start making more money, so you start spending more money.
Yeah, and again, I just don't see. I can't name any dentists that I think live within their means. They just have an exorbitant lifestyle. The physicians are crazy too. Lawyers, dentists, and physicians. I think they're plagued by that. Where do you think that comes from?
I think it comes from the fact that when they do start getting out of school, the income ramps up pretty quickly. And it's not too hard to make a lot of money in dentistry. And money comes easy, it's easy to spend too. And so instead of really having that discipline and being able to look forward and say, well, what's the end, right? What's the end game that I'm playing for? We start spending everything we make now, and we lose that side of the future. So I would argue it's just kind of poor planning and not the right mindset. And mindset is really everything, right? What's the game we're playing? What are the results we're trying to achieve?
Okay, so what are you doing right now? What are you doing for dentists? What is your wheelhouse, your business model? At LifeStone, it's LifeStone CO, LifeStoneCompany.com. Timothy J. McNeely. What are you doing for my homies?
Well, I'll tell you, it really is that spectrum. For the younger dentists who are straight out of school, who need help with budgeting and planning, I tell them, go take a Dave Ramsey's course. I love Dave. No one does this better than Dave in terms of talking about how to get a plan in place, how to do the budgeting, how to do your spending, how to set categories. He's fantastic at that.
Out of Chattanooga, Tennessee?
Yeah, good old Dave Ramsey's in Financial Peace University. I've recommended that course to more people than I can tell you.
What's the name of the course? Financial what?
Financial Peace University. And it's, I think, like a 6 or 8 week course, and it really just covers the basics of money management. And what's nice about it, my wife and I have done it a couple times, and what I really enjoy about it is all of a sudden we're forced to sit through a class, right? We're driving there, we're driving back, and it's focused time, focused attention on, what are we spending our money on? What are we trying to achieve? Where are we heading? And so often in life, we're reactionary. We're not proactive. And doing courses, for me and a lot of the people I recommend them to, appreciate it because it forces them to take time and actually spend time and effort thinking about these things. So for the younger dentist, I say get a budget in place, figure out what your spending looks like, figure out what your lifestyle looks like, get those pieces of the puzzle in place. I typically work more at the other end of the market, people who are about 5 to 10 years off from retirement, who have accumulated significant wealth. And I find there's 5 key concerns they have. Number 1 is manage my investments well. I don't want to lose the money I already have. Second biggest concern I see is wealth enhancement. I've never met anyone who wants to pay more than their fair share in taxes. They want to pay what they owe and not a penny more. The third key concern is wealth transfer. It's how do I get my money? How do I get my assets to the next generation? How do I take care of my kids? How do I take care of the people that matter? Fourth biggest concern is what I call wealth protection. How do you protect everything you've worked so hard for from being unjustly taken, either from lawsuit, divorce, or some other unjust means? And then lastly, about a third of the people I work with, very charitably inclined. They have causes that they absolutely care about, but they don't have a well thought out plan for protecting and passing on money to those charities. So those are really kind of the 5 key areas that I work with. And like I said, more towards the other end of the spectrum, the people who are about 5 or 10 years off, because I find that's where I can add some very significant value and help people out.
Okay, so just to succinct, the 5 areas that you focus on, one would be?
I call it investment consulting. It's how do you manage the investment portfolio in an efficient way.
And is that, so how do you, investment consulting is what you're calling that?
Yeah, that's where the registered investment advisor that I'm associated with, right? I wear a different hat when I do that, and that's regulated type business, and it's really putting the money together. How do you manage that portfolio? And the dirty little secret of my industry that not a lot of financial and wealth managers talk about is that piece of the business. It's pretty commoditized. Now, it's not to say that it's easy to do. It certainly takes some skills to manage a portfolio well. But once you reach a certain level, everyone has the same portfolio essentially. And not a lot of people like to talk about that. Kind of like in dentistry. Once you reach a certain level, an elite dentist, his crown's going to be just as good as another elite dentist. It's real hard to add value by just doing crowns. Same in the investment world.
So the investment consulting is being, that's the first core, and it's being commoditized.
Highly commoditized. Now, there's certain people you never want to let them touch your money because they're just bad. But once you reach a certain level, everyone's got the same sauce.
Okay.
And so that's why I really focus on where can we add value. And that second area, wealth enhancement, huge, right? Mitigation of taxes. To give you an example of how this plays in, I was just working with the doctor. He's worth about $10 million. He's been a great saver, no kids. Has his practice doing about, $1 million something a year. And his wife works as an employee.
Dentistry?
No. At a lifestyle healthcare services company.
Okay.
She's W-2 employee. He's the dentist. And we started really doing a deep dive into their plans. And once again, he didn't want to pay more than his fair share in taxes. And I approached him with the idea of layering on something called a defined benefit plan to his practice. This is where we can get massive contributions to his retirement plan. He says, Tim, I've thought about that before, but I don't like the idea of having to commit to doing contributions. But by looking at his portfolio, by reallocating some of the assets, we're going to be able to generate more than enough income from his taxable investment portfolio so we can get him ongoing contributions from his business and probably over the next 5 years save him over $250,000 in taxes just by figuring out where we're going to pull the money from and by properly structuring some of those wealth enhancement ideas. $250,000 in savings. That's massive. What kind of returns do I have to get on a portfolio to get him an extra $250,000? That's a lot harder. The tax planning, big difference. We can really move the needle for someone doing that.
And what would be, so what, that was the first 5 core areas. First, investment consulting. Second, wealth enhancement. What's third?
Third is the wealth transfer. We all have people that we care about. We want to get our assets to that next generation. Maybe it's helping kids through school. Maybe it's taking care of aging parents. Maybe it's just that estate planning piece. How do we do that in an efficient manner? Once again, an example with the clients. They're worth about $6 million, great practice, and they've got some younger kids. One's special needs child, one's in college. And they said, Tim, you know what, we're really worried, right? If we were to pass away today, right, if we got hit by the proverbial bus, what's going to happen to our assets? They said, we don't want our 23-year-old son getting these assets. He would destroy himself, right? If I got $6 million at 23, that would be a big mistake. Now I'm a little bit older, a little bit wiser, and you and I would know what to do with that money now. We make good choices. Younger, we're not quite sure. So we're working with the estate planning attorney to put some things in place to make sure the son's protected if something happens. So that's that wealth transfer piece, right? How do you get the money and the assets to the next generation in a way that makes sense?
All right, and what's 4?
And number 4 is wealth protection. We want to protect everything we work so hard for from being unjustly taken. Divorce is a killer. Lawsuits are a killer. Or even here in California and other parts of the country, right? How do we protect everything from the natural disasters that we have? Do we have the right insurance coverages in place? Do we have gaps that we need to be looking at?
So it's mostly, in your experience, it's mostly divorce. And you said natural disaster. What was the other one?
Yeah, divorce, lawsuits, natural disasters.
Yeah, and well, I mean, I don't know, but it seems like divorce is a huge one, and for me, it's so funny because it's just so funny when you see it happen to women dentists all the time now, and they plot against. I mean, you always hear the same thing. My husband, he decided he wanted to quit his job, spend more time with the kids. At 1 year and 1 day, he files for divorce, and him and his attorney planned it, and he's a stay home. He didn't have income, and it just grinds her gears thinking that every month she's got to write him a check for $8,000 for the next decade. Yep. So then what's the fifth one?
And then the fifth one is about a third of the people I work with, they have charitable causes that they're absolutely passionate about. And they want to support those causes, and they really want to have an impact, not only with the money they give, but the time they give. And they want to make sure that when they do give, they do it in a tax efficient manner so they get the most bang for their buck. They want to magnify those charitable gifts.
So in Dentaltown, it's a message board. So all the information is stored and eye-carved and easily found. But under finance, it has accounting, bookkeeping, dental stocks, equipment acquisition, practice expansion, patient finance plans, personal finance, taxes, and real estate investments. So are you more personal finance or taxes, or would that be an inclusive category? Where would this be?
Yeah, it really is an inclusive, right? It's the personal financial planning, but also with a focus on tying in the business with it too. Once again, you ask about those differences that the dentists have versus everyone else. Most of the time, there's that business ownership. And so it's tying both of those pieces together. I put it under comprehensive financial planning. And really, and we'll talk about this a little bit more, it's more of a virtual family office. And we'll talk about family offices and how that's a strategy that the super rich use. And we'll talk about how to assemble the right team members here coming up.
Well, let's go. So what are the strategies of the super rich? Or how those worth what do you say, 500 million or more? Or?
Yeah, it's 500 million or more, and I've been very privileged. So I've been able to partner with some of the best out there and do some cutting edge research on the super rich. Those exceptional families worth 500 million or more. I don't have any clients like that. I don't want any clients like that, but I certainly want to learn from the richest families out there and how do they manage their affairs. And then once again, how can we bring that down to everyone regardless of their net worth? And there are certain lessons that we start seeing. The first and biggest one is that results matter. The super rich are very focused on getting the results they want. And they don't let other people drive the agenda for them. They are very focused on achieving certain things. And then they'll assemble that team of individuals around them who truly understand them. This is something I call the human element that's really come through in the research. And when we start looking at the difference between normal wealth planning versus elite wealth planning, it's that human element that comes out. Across all spectrums, right? All sorts of planners, right? If you're playing at the top of your game, you're going to have technical expertise at what you're doing. But then we start diving in and we say, well, what's the main focus? A good wealth planner, they're going to have that technical expertise, but the focus is going to be what are the legal strategies? What are the legal products? What are the things we put in place to achieve those results? When we get to the elite wealth planning, the difference that we find is, once again, technically adept planners, but the focus is the human element. What are the results that the client actually wants? How do we get them the results as opposed to what strategies and products we put in place? So it's really what comes first. And that's the first lesson we learned from the super rich is they're very good at focusing on the results they want and not letting someone else drive the ship for them.
So then what is this virtual family office?
Yeah, so this actually ties right back into the human element that we're talking about. If you and I were super rich, if we sold our companies for 500 million or more, we would go out, we would actually assemble a team of individuals to serve just our family. We would have some of the best accountants and CPAs and attorneys, real estate brokers, private aviation specialists, concierge medical professionals, business coaches. We would have a full team of professionals at our disposal working just for us. Now, the problem with that is most individuals don't have a massive payroll to run that. But the reason that the super rich put these family office structures in place is they want control. They want to work with individuals who really understand them and, once again, really get them. So that's why this family office structure is so important, is it allows them to pull together the best of the best individuals to simply serve that family.
Well, I always thought that my whole life, ever since I watched my dad open up restaurants, that one of the neatest things about owning your own business is that you have this this family that you're talking about. Like I have my own controller. I have my own bookkeepers. I have my own, I got employees, a lawyer. You have all that there. And a lot of times when people think about, well, what's your exit strategy? You're going to sell it? Because, you get offers. Everybody that owns a dental office is getting offers by DSOs to buy them. And it's like, man, one of the things why I would never want to sell my business is because of this virtual family that, I mean, I don't even get, the United Postal Office doesn't even know where I live. It all comes to work. I don't want to open my mail. Why would I want to open my mail when I have a whole team that would know it better?
Yeah, right. You've been able to assemble not just what I call the wealth management side, but a lot of the administration services too, right? Bill pay, bookkeeping, right? Scheduling, all those administrative things that take away a lot of our time and effort from actually focusing on what we're truly good at. And that's exactly what a family office structure does.
Yeah. So so that is so true. So what else? What else did continue on?
Yeah. So lesson one, like I said, really that human element piece. Then it's putting that family office structure in place. And we do that today. I do that for my clients and select professionals I work with by assembling what I call a virtual family office. So I've got a team of about 50 different individuals, some of the best out there in all these different specialties that we can bring in on an as-needed basis, as opposed to having them on payroll the entire time. The other lesson that we really learn, I call it the virtuous cycle. And this is what comes through in the research. The super rich, they don't get to where they get to by accident. They get there with purposeful intent. And actually, even tying back to some of your things about, lifestyle creep and spending continuing to go up and up and up, right? Those are things that happen because we're not paying attention. The super rich, they're really good at paying attention to things. And when we get into the virtuous cycle, and we actually pull this out by studying the family offices and looking at what are the processes that these family offices follow, we really find, once again, there's a kind of a 6-step process that they go through. It all starts with profiling, understanding the client, right? What are they actually trying to achieve? And, even going back to some of your first statements, right? It's kind of scary when you're on Facebook today because everyone's a consultant. I don't know if you've seen the proliferation of all these ads and all these experts out there, but I think my dog has a consulting company now, right? Everyone's a consultant, and that's a little scary because we've got a lot of what I call pretenders out there. And pretenders are very well-meaning individuals. They actually, I believe, have the client's best interest at heart, but they don't have the technical skills and expertise to truly help serve that client well. So they're good people. They don't want to harm anyone, but they don't have the technical skills to do it. That's why that profiling is so important, right? Because the more you understand the client, the more you can understand your goals and objectives, the clearer you can communicate to that team of professionals around you. So it all starts with profile. Once you've got the profile done, you reach out to your professional support network, right? Your virtual family office. And you work with this team professionals to do what I call scenario thinking. And scenario thinking is really nothing more than asking a whole bunch of what if questions. What if my kids want to start World War III after I pass away? What do we do to prevent that? What happens if I become disabled? What's going to happen to my dental practice? How's that going to pass on? What happens if I want to leave money to a lover and I don't want my spouse and kids to know, right? Really personal things. This is the scenario thinking that we want to go through. It's planning, and it's actually testing on the last concept that I'll leave with you called stress testing. But this scenario thinking is where you're running through different scenarios and simply asking, what if? Then that team of professionals is going to come back. They're going to frame the recommendations. They're going to actually present them in a way that makes sense, Once again, this is something that's so common. We see it all the time. We actually see it in the data reflected when we look at estate planning. People will go to their estate planning attorneys, they will pay to have the work done, and then we ask them, well, have you actually followed up and implemented your estate plan? Turns out about 75% of them haven't implemented their estate plan. The reason they don't implement it is they have no idea what they actually agreed to when they were in the attorney's office. So we need to frame those recommendations in a way that actually makes sense to the client. From there, it becomes just the technical aspect of implementing those recommendations. We've identified the hurdles, put the plan in place. Then we go to ongoing monitoring and refining, right? We always want to be updating our plans, and we need to be responding to regulatory changes, tax planning changes, right? Political changes. What are the ongoing monitoring? Or goal changes, right? Maybe there's a birth of a child, or maybe we've had that divorce, or maybe there is that disability. How do we refine that plan? And it's really by following that virtuous cycle. That's how the super rich are able to get the results they get. It's by having a process in place.
Nice. And what are these steps that you're talking about? Profile, scenario thinking. You said it was the 5 what?
I call it the virtuous cycle. And I'd actually be happy to send your any of the listeners who want this, I'll send them an article on it if they just email me at tim@lifestoneco.com. I'll shoot them a copy that goes
Actually, what we do on Dental Town is everybody gets their own thread. I wish you would post it on Dental Town because it's a more archival. That way, when they hear this podcast, and what's weird about podcasts is people listen to shows year, 2, 3 years later. I mean, they're kind of timeless. But yeah, it'd be easier just to post it on Dental Town, then everybody could see it. But you're calling it the virtuous cycle?
Correct, yeah. And once again, we call it that virtuous cycle because it's a process that they use to get the results they want. Once again, super rich, they're very intentional, right? They don't get there by accident. They get there because of focus.
And okay, so then what else? What's next?
Well, from there, we really move on to I would say it's the biggest lesson of all, and that's stress testing. And this is a true story. In 1979, there was an airplane that took off for a sightseeing trip from New Zealand. They were heading up to Antarctica with, I think, 259 people on board. And the pilots didn't know that when they took off that plane, the navigation system was off by 2 degrees. And the pilots in the plane got over Antarctica and they descended through the clouds to do the sightseeing. And they didn't realize that that navigation system, by being off by 2 degrees, had actually placed them in the path of an active volcano. Now, they weren't able to see that volcano because the ground and the volcano were both covered with snow. And by the time the warning alarms on the plane sounded and said, pull up, pull up, pull up, it was too late. And the plane slammed into the side of the mountain and all 259 passengers on board lost their lives. It was an absolutely tragic, tragic accident. And it could have been avoided by realizing the plane was off course. And interestingly enough, 90% of the time when a plane's flying, it's actually not heading towards its intended destination. It's off because of wind, because of turbulence, because of other factors. It's not actually heading towards its intended destination. It's always course correcting. It's always making corrections so that it can end up on course. Or another way to think about it, like how long is your commute back and forth from your studio to your home, Howard?
30 minutes, depending on traffic.
Okay, so if you got in your car and you just pressed down on the accelerator pedal and you didn't do any course correction with your steering wheel, what's the likelihood of you getting home?
Yeah, 0.
Not gonna happen. And the same is true with our financial lives, with your listeners' financial lives. We're all heading towards a future financial destination. And it's by stress testing, it's by course correcting that we're actually going to end up at that intended destination. And this is really probably the most important lesson that comes down to us from the super rich. It's stress testing our existing wealth plans. So important, because a lot of times our planning has been done incrementally. Maybe we met with an investment advisor and did some investments planning. Then we met with an insurance person and did some insurance planning, and then some estate planning, and then maybe we did a little business planning. It's all been done piecemeal. It's been done over time, but it's never been looked at comprehensively. We've never done that stress testing to help catch and correct those errors.
So on finance is one of the busiest sections of the Dental Town message boards. Because money's the answer. What's the question? This guy posts under finance. A young dentist here. I spent the last year and a half working for a DSO and was fired about 3 weeks ago due to agreements. Whatever. Gross income for the first 8 months of the year, $320,000. The company enrolled me in a 401k in March after my 1 year anniversary. Contributed, but max out. What is saying? If you were in my situation, what would you do to minimize taxes?
Yeah. So in his case, right? Does he say if he's a W-2 employee or is he an independent contractor?
Well, let's talk about that because okay, when you're working for an associate, you're an employee, and a lot of the big boys, they're going to do it legally because they got lawyers. They got this. What did you call their staff? I loved it. What do you call them?
The virtual family office.
Yeah, the virtual family office. Lori's been my president for 20 years. Don, my office manager, 20 years. Stacy, my controller, 20 years. Ken, I got all these people that have been here 20 years. It is a family, and they take care of yours truly, and I just couldn't do it without it. But when you go play for a big company, they got a management team that keeps them out of legal trouble. You can never be an independent contractor because, oh, yeah, sure, the associate, the dentist up the street, some hillbilly friend of yours wants to do it for whatever stupid reasons. But if you didn't pay your taxes, and then all of a sudden the IRS found out that you hadn't paid your taxes for 5 years and you don't have any money and you were paid as an independent contractor, which you weren't, they're going to take that dentist to court. And in 32 years, I've seen this happen several times. And you're just going to go in front of the IRS judge, and there's no jury. There's no fancy jury. You're not trying to spin some crazy people in the juror box. It's you and the IRS judge. And the IRS judge says, who set the hours? Oh, the owner. Whose equipment was it? The owner. Who owned the land and building? The owner. How was this guy an independent an independent contractor is when I'm building a house. I don't know anything about plumbing, and I contract out with a plumber and a roofer and electrician, and the judge says, yeah, that you weren't a plumber. This wasn't your electrical company. You were a contractor, and these were independent contractors, and we'll deal with that. They're not independent contractors. That they have a laundry list of 20 questions. You fail every one of them. And then as a president, you say, well, your associate that you paid as an independent contractor, well, he didn't pay taxes for 8 years. Here's how much he owes, plus taxes, plus penalties, plus legal fees. Write me a check right now. So I don't know. I could rant on that, but do you agree with that or disagree?
I do. I think the misclassification of independent contractors is one of the biggest dangers out there, because people think, well, I'm really not in control. But like you said, they pass or they fail to pass all the questions that are the test of an independent contractor. So that to me becomes an area of true stress testing, right? Ask the question, what if? What if someone comes back and says, well, those people that you thought are independent contractors aren't? And that's something I would argue the owners of these practices, if you're employing independent contractors, you need to be asking that question. What if they're really not?
So I guess the real question this young mind is asking is, if you're an employee, if you're young out of dental school and you're an employee for DSO, do you feel they have less tax advantages than if they own their own business?
Yeah, absolutely. They I would argue they're at a disadvantage because the primary saving tool that they're going to have is that 401k, right? Whatever kind of qualified plan is in place. But aside from that, there's not a whole lot of tax engineering you can do. You can deal with some unreimbursed business expenses, but it's much better to have your own corporation because then you can legitimately write off business expenses.
So if you were talking to a bunch of dental graduates, say they're seniors in dental school. I mean, you look at the big macroeconomic numbers and you see that the average dentist who owns his own practice nets $100,000 more than a dentist who's an employee. Besides that macro, how would you coach a young kid of the pros and cons of being a dentist owner versus a dentist employee. Because the pros are going to be, I don't have to wear any of those hats. I'm just going to roller skate into work at 8, leave at 5, and I'm not going to think any of that. But the cons are, we do know macroeconomically that the owner operators on average make $100,000 a year more net.
Well, not only that, but the end result, they've got an asset that's worth something that they can sell someday too. So the numbers absolutely work out better towards practice ownership. But numbers aren't the only thing that drive us, right? You hit on it too. It's quality of life. Some people are not wired as business owners. I come across them all the time. They are just not wired for it. They're not entrepreneurial. They don't want those headaches. And you can maybe pay them $500,000 more a year, and they're going to be like, just don't know that I want that, right? They're not, the money doesn't matter for them. It's that quality of life piece. So once again, I'm going to go back to that human element, and I'm going to say, figure out who you are, right? Do you like working in a business? Do you think you want to do those things? Or do you just want to show up and go home and not have any of those headaches? Is that worth $100,000 a year to you? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but you got to get to know yourself and what kind of environment you're going to work in best.
Another kid is asking, actually, this is a 5 or 6 different threads asking this question. Stock market, like I was lucky. I graduated from high school in 1980, which is the worst I've seen anything. And then I got out of school in 87. And by the time I got my dental office open in 133 days, from May 11 to September 21st, it was 28 days before the Black Monday, where the market fell a quarter. And then you had the Y2K plummet. Then you had the Lehman's brother. And so a lot of people are on Dental Town. They're talking every day. It's been a decade since Lehman's brother. Why should I get out of the market? They just feel a cycle's coming. What do you think about that? You've obviously been hearing that talk.
Yeah, no, right. When you look at the world today, right, socially, politically, economically, there's uncertainty everywhere we look. We just have no idea what the future looks like. And the investments, right, once again, that's a different hat I wear. I wear that as a registered investment advisor when I'm dealing with that. So I'm just going to talk some generalities here. But, I always liken it to a roller coaster, right? If you know what that roller coaster is going to be like, and you get on that top of the first hill and you start heading down, and you go, oh my gosh, this roller coaster is awful, I want off, and you start taking off those safety restraints and you hop off the roller coaster ride, you're going to get hurt, right? You're going to get hurt pretty badly, and you're probably going to die because you try climbing off this roller coaster while it's heading straight down. But if you close your eyes, you say, okay, you know what? I knew this was going to be awful. I knew it's going to be terrible, but it's going to be over in 2 minutes. You're going to most likely come to the end of that roller coaster ride and be just fine. And the same is very true with the markets in general. If you've structured your portfolio for where you are in life, and you've done the risk analysis, and you're comfortable with the roller coaster ride, and you've done the analytics, you're going to be just fine no matter what the market does because you've prepared for it. Now, I would never tell someone who's 5 or 10 years off from retirement to be in 100% equities, because that's just a little too risky. But for the younger dentists, let that volatility, let the roller coaster work for you, because time and time again, all the data shows you can't time the market. It just doesn't work. Maybe you get it right once or twice or 3 times, but over the long haul, there's no real data to suggest that you can figure out when the tops and bottoms are.
And I just want to be very clear on this. Remember, Einstein's work that's been confirmed for a century, that there is no such thing as time. You only live in the present. You can't go outside and look in the sky to see where the Big Bang was. And when people sit there and say what's going to happen a year from now, it's like, okay, there's no such thing as the future any more than the past. I mean, if there is a past, then come on, I'll hold my hand, and what are we going to do? We're going to turn the earth counterclockwise. And I mean, we can't go back to yesterday any more than we go back tomorrow. So when someone says, well, I think next year the market's going to do this, first you just got to stop and say, okay, now next year doesn't exist. Just like we can't go to last year. Mm-hmm. The only time is in the present. By the way, Chandler, Arizona has this big satellite company right by my office, and they do a lot of the GPS stuff. And when they put up those GPS, and you got to go back to 87 when I started opening up. I mean, I can remember several people over the course of 6 months say, oh my God, when we put up those satellites, we all thought it was us. We thought that we were syncing it wrong. It was always the IT people were always in trouble. But they finally, the government built $2 gazillion atomic clocks. They flew off in jets the opposite way around the earth and came back. And sure enough, they had different times, and they had to start going back to Uncle Albert's math, and that as these satellites get away from the gravity of the mass, time slows down. So there's no tomorrow. So when anybody's predicting the future, there is no future. It doesn't exist, just like there's no past. So market timing would mean that you think you have a great understanding of the future, which you do. Yep. You have the great understanding of something that doesn't exist, so you have zero. I just want to review some more macroeconomic numbers real quick. This is from the ADA, and I like the way Vikacek, I love the way he does his samples, everything about the guy's a class act. He says average dental specialist makes $320. So if you're still in dental school, think about this. The average specialist makes $320, average general dentist makes $197. So you're gonna make $100,000 more being one of the 10 specialists than being a general dentist. Dentists who own their own practice make $244. Dentists who are employees make $147. So you're gonna make another $100,000 a year. Obviously, blood and guts is the most money. Oral maxillofacial surgeons $448, perio $330, endo $307, pediatric dentist $304, ortho $209, prosthodontists $219. So the amount of blood dropping, prosthodontist the lowest $219, orthodontist $289. But you said something that hit me over the head. Some dentists don't want to be an owner. Pediatric dentists make $304,000. I'd rather go to hell in a handbasket than work on kids all day. And so if you don't want to own your practice, I don't want to be a pediatric dentist. So we're each different. What other advice would you give these kids in dental kindergarten school? They're in dental school. They're gonna come out on average, according to the American Dental Education Association. The average 2017 debt was $287,000 per dental student. The average cost of raising a child from birth to 17, not including college, is $233. So they come out of dental school, they've already completely paid for a kid, and they don't have the kid.
Yeah, right. They've got the debt, and my best advice is get a plan, right? Figure out your budgeting, and don't let that lifestyle creep come in, right? You're going to be looking at your loan saying, well, I just made $15,000 this month. I've only got to pay, $3,000 on my loan. That's awesome. No, pay more. Pay it down. Seriously, right? If you're going to sleep well at night, knowing that you've attacked your debt and you're getting rid of it, then get rid of it. If you decide that, wealth maximization is the most important thing, then save as much as you can and pay those minimums on the loans, right? Take that risk, but get really clear on what the results you want are, and then go forward and chase them as hard as you can. Don't deviate, but figure out what you want and then go after it.
When I was starting to talk about the stock market timing, a lot of people on Dental Town on the finance forums they wanting to get out of the market and run. So then, of course, a lot of people are saying, well, where are you going to run to? And their best idea is real estate. So when you're looking at financial planning, where does real estate fit in? Because a lot of these dentists, they own their own house. A lot of them own their own dental office. How do you see real estate in this big picture?
Yeah, real estate is really nothing more than just an additional asset class that you can own. And I love real estate. I encourage doctors to buy the real estate, to buy their buildings when they can, because it produces that passive income for them down the road. Plus, you get some really nice tax benefits by owning real estate also. You get to depreciate that asset and write it off over time. So I'm a big fan of real estate in adding that to your portfolio. So I'm not against it at all. In fact, I encourage it. Now, actually, going back to the stock market timing, so I sit through a lot of presentations every year, and the best presentation that I've seen in probably the last 18 months was someone going back through the history of the markets, and not just the history of the market, but also the headlines of the market. And they'd pull out magazine after magazine and headline after headline about what was about to happen to the market. How often do you think they got it right? They didn't. We'd see a headline, oh my gosh, the market's about to crash, and then 12 months later it was higher. We'd see a headline that the markets are about to take off and do better than they've ever done, and it's time to get in, and then the markets were down 50%. And they went through a 100 years of this, headline after headline after headline, all of them wrong. And so, right, we don't know what the future is going to bring. We have no idea.
Yeah, you have no idea because it doesn't exist. I mean, if someone said to you, do you think the market's going to crash? I'll just say, well, do you think there's 3 pink hippos living on a planet Krypton flying around on a butter? I mean, it doesn't exist.
Nope.
It doesn't exist. And I found another amazing article by the Harvard Business Review. And remember, the one thing I want to keep reminding you, I grew up in Catholic school. And in Catholic school, if you wanted to read a book, you first had to do an author search. So if you went to go check out a book in the library when I was in grammar school, they'd say, what are you reading? And I said, it's a book on Mars. Well, who wrote it? If you didn't know, she'd stop you and say, well, what if this is the craziest person ever? What if this person is talking about a Mars candy bar? Who? You always get the author search first, then you allow information in. And so most of the stuff you read is junk because it's on the internet and it's flying around and people are sharing it. You already got research that they don't even open it. It's something like 88% of everything shared on the internet was not even clicked open one time. But in Harvard Business Review, which is a good search, you don't have to do an author search when you're reading Harvard Business Review or The Economist or something like that. But they said all this stuff about millennials and millennials want this at work and millennials want. So they did an exhaustive mega-analysis study. And what did they find out? They could not find out any definitive things that the millennials versus the baby boomers had. But they did find that the variance within the baby boomers was bigger than the variance versus the millennials. The variant, So here's people thinking, well, I'm going to do all this because, I'm getting older and the staff's getting younger and I need to adapt to millennials. And it's like, dude, there's no difference. I mean, if a scientist can't find it and measure it, again, it's just storytelling. And when you look at humans at the end of the day, what they are better than anything is they're master storytellers, and half of it is disconnected from reality. I want to go back to one more thing with the finance. Again, there's so many threads. I wish you'd get on there and answer some of these questions. Again, there's so many threads saying pay off student loans or contribute to retirement accounts. I mean, they keep asking that question every month.
Well, right. What's the end goal that you're trying to achieve? Right. What are they trying to achieve? Right. If it's wealth maximization, if they want to be worth the absolute top dollar when they retire, and they're okay with the risk, right? Because these are all risk reward trade-offs, right? You can pay the minimum on your student loans and hope you make up that difference in the market. There's a good chance you will, but you might not, right? If you're okay with that risk, then stack away more money for retirement and pay the minimums on your student loans. If you say, you know what, it's really more important for me to sleep really, really well at night and pay those things off and know that I'm not going to owe anyone anything, then you should pay the student loans off, right? You can come to the mathematical best answer, but mathematically, that's not necessarily the best answer for someone, because it really, going back to our first point, it's the human element, because there's different ways to get to kind of the same result. And so it really is a deep understanding of what's important to the person, because if we can pull that out of them, if we can figure out what they're asking, what they're trying to achieve, then giving them the right answer is really easy. But it's helping them figure out what's important to them first.
So, a lot of these threads are a lot of young kids. So they're all working at DSOs for 4, 5, 6, 7 years before they get into their own place. So is the best thing they can do as an employee just a Roth IRA? I mean,
well, the Roth, they're not going to get much of a write-off for, right? It goes back to what's their goals. Are they trying to minimize their tax bite? If so, they should be trying to max out that 401k and then paying down the loans, right? If creating that financial stability is what they're trying to do, that's what they need to do. If they, right, but I would argue, getting the budget in place so that the lifestyle creep doesn't come in, so that they actually live within their means now. That's probably the most important thing they can do, is get that budget and don't spend everything you make. Figure out what you're going to spend on.
So when we were talking about your the 5 core areas, let's go back to that: investment consulting, wealth enhancement, wealth transfer, wealth protection. Let's focus on that. divorce, lawsuits, and natural disasters. So people who don't get married don't get divorced. Ask Bill Maher, how did you have the money to go give this guy running for office $1 million? And he goes, because I never got married, I never got divorced, I never had any kids. He goes, all my super rich friends. So what is your wealth protection advice for divorce, lawsuits, and natural disasters?
So it's going to come down to what you're trying to do. In the divorce area, a simple one, get a prenup. That's a real easy, simple asset protection strategy, and not just for divorce, but also protecting the spouses from litigators. So an example of this is, had a client, they put a prenup in place. They're still happily married to this day. And they put a prenup in place, and there was actually a litigation that came up. And she ended up getting sued for something. And she's a business owner, he's a business owner. And during this lawsuit, during the, what do they call it, the mediation portion, they came in and said, well, your husband's a dentist. He has some assets, right? We can get to those. And she said, no, all my assets are protected in my 401k plan, and I have a prenup in place. His assets are not mine. You know what happened to that settlement number? It came way down because they couldn't attack his assets because of that prenup. So a prenup not only, protects in case of divorce, but it can protect in case of litigation from the other sides. So that's a real simple example on the divorce one. Prenups work great. For lawsuits, oftentimes, right, just making sure you've got the right insurance coverages in place, right? Do you have some umbrella policies? Have you done a stress test on your insurance policies? Have you asked if is there coverage that we should be having? Uninsured motorists, this is a huge one that most people don't look at. Here in California, there's a lot of people that are uninsured. Imagine that. And a lot of times these policy limits for the medical side on the uninsured motorist, way too low. They're at like $300,000 or so. But if you've got 5 people in a car and an uninsured motorist hits you and causes some medical damages, you're going to bump against that $300,000 medical limit pretty quickly. Those are simple things. You can raise those limits. It doesn't cost a whole lot of extra money. Or something as simple as an umbrella policy to protect how much you have. Very simple things, very easy to get, very cheap to get, but often overlooked.
Yeah, so 40 to 50% of all married couples end up getting divorced in time. But I still haven't met anybody who's got a prenup. Mm-hmm. I imagine that's just a pretty strange thing to bring up. But what do you? So you recommend a prenup? But how they're in dental kindergarten school, and a lot of those kids marry someone in their class. And I think if you are ever gonna get married, why not marry someone in dental school? You know the same language, you have everything in common. So how do you approach a prenup, especially what if they're already married?
Okay, well, let's take your example of going back to dental school, right? I meet a classmate, we decide we want to get married, and we're both going to go into dentistry. My conversation would be, we absolutely need a prenuptial agreement, not because we're planning on divorce, but we've got to protect ourselves in case someone sues you or someone sues me. We want to keep our assets separate, right? Really, really important to do. We only want them to be able to get to half the pot, not the whole thing.
Yeah. So we talked about the prenups, the natural disaster, the those other areas. What other? I'll just go back to questions under finance because they have so many questions under finance. It just keeps going on and on and on. Should a dentist pay himself a salary? And then a lot of complicated things like I pay myself a salary. Is that profit treated differently? I own my own building. Do I pay myself rent? Is that more accounting stuff or?
Yeah, these are accounting. I know just enough to be dangerous, so I can get to the right answers. I certainly understand it all. But this is going to tie right back to the professional support network, right? We need a team in place of the right advisors. This is so important, right? And I would encourage all your listeners to go back and do this. Do an assessment of the team members you have in place, right? Do some profiling on yourself. And the profile we use, it's called the Total Client Profile. I'll post it in Dental Town later on. And create a profile of yourself and go to your professionals and say, here's what I'm trying to achieve. How are you going to help me do this? Do an assessment of your team members, because if you're working with an accountant or a CPA and they're not giving you the advice on how to structure your corporation, how to take draws, right, how to set things like a reasonable salary, you're probably with the wrong professional, right? If they don't have an understanding of dentistry and they don't get your profession, you need to find someone else. And the other thing I would encourage, don't do these things on your own, right? Get really good at outsourcing things, right? You want to outsource things that you are not an expert at. So important. Focus on your core competencies. Don't focus on things that you struggle with. You know, this is interesting. Once again, this is a lesson that comes to us from the super rich, is when we study the super rich, the things they focus on, they don't focus on their weaknesses. They don't try to improve the things they're not good at. Why don't they do that? They focus on their core competencies and the things they're really strong at, because they want to get to their end of their life and they want to be really good in just a couple things instead of mediocre at a whole bunch of things. So for example, I am not an expert in accounting and bookkeeping. I don't want to do that. I want to outsource it. I want to let someone else do that, so it's not taking up space in my brain.
And a lot of people, when you think about financial advice, they're always thinking that the first thing you're going to do is refinance their student loans. How big of a package, or how big of a tool is that with your dentist clients?
Refinancing can be absolutely huge in terms of freeing up cash flow. So, you know, I haven't talked too much about my personal story. A lot of times people ask me, they say, Tim, you know, what do you do? And I tell them what I do is exceptionally boring. But why I do it, a lot more interesting. And I'll talk about the impact of refinancing here, actually, with talking about my wife. But, you know, I met my wife, who is a dentist. And growing up, falling in love, we talk about everything that was important to us, right? What does our future look like? But we also spent a lot of time talking about our dental practice. I mean, it was a massive source of stress in her life. And we'd be out on date night having a good time, and all of a sudden the conversation was, Tim, I got to hold back my paycheck so I can make payroll. Or that grumpy patient I saw today, I just know I'm going to peer review, or I've got to fire someone. If I don't do it right, I'm going to get sued. And at that time, I was really struggling with being a financial advisor. I thought it was my job just to manage the investments really, really well. Well, it turned out it didn't matter how well I could manage her little meager investment portfolio. I actually wasn't able to help her. And so I found myself in a job I absolutely hated, unable to really take care of the person I love the most. Something needed to change. And so that's where I really started studying what the super rich do. What are the best of the best advisors do for their clients? How do they move that needle? And so I assembled that right team of professionals. And to answer your question about how big of a difference does things like refinancing make, it makes a major difference. We refinanced the loan on my wife's building. And by doing that, all of a sudden payroll wasn't an issue anymore, right? We had that free cash flow because we reduced the cost of debt. We also worked on just the bookkeeping and reducing other expenses. Huge thing. And we got back to enjoying life and being on top of the world together. But sometimes life throws you something that you're not ready for and throws you a curveball. And Dana started to have a lot of problems with her hands. She couldn't even hold the forceps to do extractions anymore. Now it wasn't just making payroll we were worried about. It's how is she going to pay the bills? How are we going to pay our mortgage? What's going to happen if she can't practice dentistry anymore? And we're people of faith, spent some time in prayer. And once I had my head on straight, I started stress testing our plans, right? I started applying and doing the lessons of the super rich. And actually discovered that her disability policy had been set up incorrectly when she first got out of school. It was set up in a way that the benefits were fully taxable to her. She'd bought the policy from what I call a pretender, right? Someone who really cared about her, wanted to serve her well, but gave her bad advice. And by those benefits being fully taxable, it meant we didn't have the income we were going to need. So we made a change, started paying for the policy in a way that created tax-free income. And we both breathed a huge sigh of relief because that one change gave us the income we were going to need. And I'll never forget the day sitting in the doctor's office waiting for him to come in and tell Dana if she had a future in dentistry. The reason I won't forget that day, Howard, is it didn't matter what he was going to tell us when he walked in the door. We had run the numbers, we had done the stress testing, we knew that we were going to be okay. And that's what gets me up every single day, is I never want anyone to find themselves in a situation where they've got that kind of uncertainty facing them. I want them to face the future unknown, but I want them to face that future with certainty, knowing that they're going to be okay because they've taken the steps to build a strong, solid financial foundation. So yeah, to answer your question, refinancing, it makes a big difference. It made a big difference in our life, and I see it make a big difference in students' lives too.
So financing is a big move. It's again the next thread, market nearing a bottom. Are we have the get out of debt thread is a big deal. When I read the get out of a debt thread, you can tell. This thread has 6.6 thousand comments after. I mean, it's just alive. The get out of debt, but you can tell there's a big emotional element. I mean, this isn't a math finance question. It's kind of like when you look at money. It's a very emotional thing for a lot of people, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And right. Yeah. What? 6.6 thousand questions you said, or how many questions?
Comments. 6,000 comments.
Right. And like you said, it's an emotional thing. And my guess is I haven't read all 6,000, but I bet a lot of those comments are, it's keeping me up at night. I'm really worried about this. I'm just not sure how I'm going to do this. Right. There's that uncertainty. And I would argue if that's what's driving it, then pay that off as quick as you can, because the sooner you're out of debt, the sooner you can start redirecting that money towards retirement funds. Now, mathematically, you're not going to end up as well, because mathematically you do better if you invest early. But you know what? You're probably going to sleep a whole heck of a lot better knowing that you've paid off your debt and you don't owe anyone anything. What's that worth? I would argue that's probably priceless.
So how does I can't believe our hour flew by that fast. So how does someone contact you if they want to know more?
Yeah, so if they would like to do a stress test on their existing plans, they can go to lifestoneco.com or find me on Twitter at Tim McNeely, or find me on LinkedIn. So I'm on all the social channels, and be happy to give anyone a copy of Becoming Seriously Wealthy if they'd like to dive into that book and really learn some of these strategies in depth. So I've tried to keep everything on a high level today, because it's impossible to dive into specifics. But the book certainly goes into some specific case studies for everyone.
And what book is that you're talking about?
It's called Becoming Seriously Wealthy. So I was invited to write the foreword to this.
Right.
And it talks about what are the strategies that people are using to build serious wealth outside their business. And by serious wealth, we define that as $20 million of net worth outside of their business.
And how do they get a copy of that book?
I'd be happy to send them to it, free plus shipping. And I can post that link in Dentaltown.
Okay, so he's on Twitter. He's Tim McNeely, McNeely, and which, by the way, Mick has to be Irish or Scottish, and the first real economist was a Scot. Adam Smith, The Wealth of Nations. I lectured right across from that his statue in Scotland, and my funniest joke is, do you know how copper wire was invented?
How?
It was two Scots fighting over a penny. And the easiest dollar earned is $1 in expenses saved. The second easiest dollar earned is $1 in taxes delayed. But the hardest damn dollar you'll ever earn is doing another root canal build up and crown on some patient so you can net $1. And the thread that I did not want to talk about on Dentaltown, on this finance thread, because it just really irritates me, is this thread, large home edition. Pay cash or finance at this point in my career. And every old fart is saying, why do you want to add a huge addition onto your home? And of course, he's saying, well, I got 4 kids. Yeah, and in 1 decade, they're all going to be gone. And then you have this big house, and you and then these people talking, and in other threads they're stressed about root canals, fillings, crowns, or overhead, or this or that or this that. And I'm like, my gosh. If you want to lower your stress, just simplify your life. And like, I don't want to own a boat. Do you think every weekend I want to go take care of a boat? I can find 10 people who own a boat. All I need to do is find a case of beer and go on their boat. You don't need a cabin up north. I wouldn't even want to take care of a cabin up north. They're called hotels. So just minimalizing your lifestyle. And here's another psychological thing I've noticed. When people have no money, they don't blink at a 5-year finance on a new car. But when people do have money and they would be paying cash for that car, oh, they keep their old car for another year or 2 or 3. It's so different to go to Lexus and hand them $100,000 cash for a new car. But my God, when you're out of school, just to go get a 5-year lease on $100,000 land, you never had it, so you didn't lose it. So basically, there's only 2 people on earth. Either there's a dollar, and you're paying a nickel to someone else your entire life to use their dollar, or that person's using your dollar and he's paying you a nickel interest. So if you're going to pay interest on other people's money your entire life, you're going to be a peasant. And that's the fastest IQ test, because a peasant and a dollar will always part. They cannot keep it in their pocket for a minute. It's like it's a hot lava rock. And then there's another person who says, I can entertain an idea and reject it, and I'd rather just keep my dollar. And because there's 8 billion people that'll pay you a nickel a month for the nickel a year for the rest of your life for your dollar. So how soon are you going to get from using other people's money, paying interest, to receiving interest as other people are using your money? And I see this in dental school. I see kids come out of school $300,000-$400,000 in debt, go buy a dental office in downtown San Francisco. They don't buy a house. They don't buy a car. They don't even get an apartment. They live in this new office they built. They're basically living there, and they're open 7 days a week. And 4 years later, their $400,000 of student loans is paid off. Their practice is paid off, and they're sitting on $300,000 of cash, and they're not even 35, and they'll never use other people's money again. And then you meet dentists. I mean, I know dentists that are 67 that just bought a new house on a 30-year mortgage. It's like, really? You think you're going to be working when you're 97? So it's all spending, people. Just don't get married so you don't get divorced. Don't have kids. Don't add on that, especially. Just live below your means, and you won't be stressed, and you'll live happily ever after. And on that note, I'm going to go have lunch right now with one of my 4 boys. Thank you. So
yeah,
I had 2 boys too many, and I get it. Thank you so much for coming on the show today, and I hope to see you on the boards in this finance section. They have so many, everything you're talking about today, they're asking on Dental Town.
I will get on there and contribute, and I'll leave you with the Dave Ramsey's quotes. I wish I came up with this, but he says, if you live like no one else now, later on, you can live like no one else.